we have seen that the government could, in principle, nationalize a resource or give the exclusive right to some monopolists to administer it. Are there other less drastic ways to administer properly the open access resource? In other words, how should a government regulate the fishing, or what should the government do? So we can look at what the industry looks like. So can we have some insight into what is open to the possibilities for government? First option that looks very obvious is just to distribute quotas. So just say that there's a quota that tells fishermen you cannot fish more than B star O. Obviously, the difficulty there is to make sure that the fishermen respect the quota as well, and that these quotas are distributed fairly and paid properly. It's not always the case, but it's a viable option. So let's just go ahead and write this. So one would be distribute quotas. And then, so that's one. Can we think of some other policy that would solve the problem, that would have an equivalent impact on the market? Think about what you learn in microeconomics. Yes or no, maybe if you didn't think about it. So a tax. So imagine that I wanted to tax every boat. So what would be the appropriate tax to reach the optimal solution? So you have two ways of doing it. So one is with your eyes, and the other is by computation. So we're going to do both of them. So think about it. Okay, so well, again, what we want is to achieve B star O. And the question is, if I wanted to impose some tax on every boat that is rented, so what should this tax be? Well, since it's everything is linear here, so it looks very obvious that I should tax such that the cost of renting a boat is not C, but C plus the tax. So here. And if that were the case, then the fishermen would naturally rent boats until they reach this number of boats, B star O. And what is this tax? Well, it's just at the center of P alpha K and C. So it's essentially P alpha K minus C divided by 2. So that's the way to do it graphically, if you want. Now let's just do it properly. So let's do it in a way that makes sense. So one way to think about it is we want to start with the optimal fishing with the open access fishing, add some tax, and get the optimal fishing. So let's look at what would happen if we consider quotas, for instance. All right, so now I have to not show that, but to impose a tax on boats. So imagine that we are looking at stocks. So what we want is to have the open access stock with a tax equal to the stock with optimal fishing. So what does that look like? Well, let's write this as S star F, but with tax, so T. And we want this S star F with tax to be equal to S star O. So what was S star F? It was C divided by P alpha. But now we impose a tax on both. So we could impose other taxes, and that's some exercise you can try. So if you impose a ad valorem tax or a tax on, I don't know, sales tax on fishes, for instance, you could get something similar. So imagine it's a tax on renting boats, so plus this tax, which has to be equal to the socially optimal stock of fish. So here it is K plus C divided by P alpha, which was divided by 2. And then all we have to do is isolate T. So let's multiply by P alpha here on both sides. Then let's subtract C. And let's simplify further. So P alpha we can multiply this, P alpha, and then P alpha multiplies C divided by P alpha is just C. And then I have C over 2 minus C, so I get minus C here. So that was what we found graphically. If you remember, it was P alpha K minus C divided by 2. So we confirmed that it made sense. So that would be another way to do it. Now let's ask what is the actual way that world governments are regulating fishing. Think about the situation we have observed up to now. Well, actually, they are not really successful in regulating fishing because it is so difficult. Because even though governments can try to administer their national waters, it's easy for boats from foreign nations to just go in their national water and start taking the fishes, or just not respect the quotas, and it's extremely expensive for governments to regulate it properly and arrest rogue boats that fish illegally. And so what tends to happen is that especially for very expensive fishes like bluefin tuna, for instance, then it's very difficult to have international agreements. So let's just write the de facto solution. Laissez-faire. So no, we just give up. It's just too difficult. So what happens? Do we run out of fish? Do you eat sometimes fish or not? Well, yes, we still eat fish. So what's happening to fisheries then? Are they disappearing or not? Well, they are disappearing, but the fishes that you're eating now are not the same fishes that you would have eaten, say, 50 years ago. Now they were probably fishes that came from aquaculture. So that were basically a private property. So what is the solution? Basically is we change the nature of the good from a non-excludable good to an excludable good. Because now if I have my own fishery, my own aquaculture, then I can prevent my neighbors from stealing my fishes because they're mine, because I'm growing them. So essentially, the public access resource is changed to a private property. So I'm absolutely not saying that this is the efficient way of doing things, because nature has given us amazing resources for free since millennia, but humans tend to just invent better tools to exploit them, and in the end, resources are depleted much faster than the Earth can generate them. And that's the de facto solution that we tend to observe in almost every market. So that's what we're going to see more in detail.